When cell phones start wreaking havoc, a super robot is revived to stop the force controlling them for vengeance. Birds gather at a cell tower in the middle of a field while a mysterious man climbs the structure. He then uses the structure to end his own life, and the birds around him become agitated. The following day, robotics research students are welcomed by an alluring woman named Neela to their laboratory. She takes them to meet their professor, Dr. Vasigaran, whom they heard is developing a new humanoid robot. To their surprise, Vasigaran reveals that Neela is the robot designed to understand human emotions. After the meeting, one of the students leaves when his phone suddenly flies off. Across the city, countless mobile phones start flying off on their own, causing panic. That night, Vasigaran continues working in his laboratory when his girlfriend Sana calls. She's pissed that he's been dodging her calls, but when Vasigaran tries to appease her, his phone also flies away. The next day, people gather at the police station to report their missing devices. At a government meeting, Vasigaran shares that no known technology could have caused the event. The director of another research institute, Dr. Bora, accuses his fellow scientist of causing this to gain attention. The man is spiteful of Vasigaran since his father's death was caused by his previous creation. That evening, Jayanth, a mobile phone shop owner, calls for a shipment of new devices to make a big sale. However, the new mobile phones break out of the truck delivering them. When Jayanth goes to bed later, he finds thousands of mobile phones covering his bedroom walls. The man hurries to escape, but the devices block him. They show him images of sparrows before finishing him off. The next day, Vasigaran and Neela are called to check the crime scene. Learning that the victim's new stock of mobile phones went missing last night, the scientist wonders if someone doesn't want the devices around. Neela finds dust in one corner, which she discovers is composed of the usual materials for mobile phones. With this, Vasigaran deduces that the missing devices killed the man. Later, the scientist recovers an old phone and places a tracker on it. When the phone flies away, the tracker leads him to a village outside the city. Vasigaran and Neela immediately head there and discover the devices levitating over a lake. The swarm then turns into a bird's claw to topple a nearby cell tower over them. Luckily, Neela saves the professor from being hit. Meanwhile, the owner of a phone company, Manoj, confronts the Minister of Telecommunications, Vaira, since his cell towers have been destroyed. The businessman threatens Vaira to fix the problem, otherwise he'll leak his secrets to the public. At the next meeting, Vasigaran reports what they saw in the field, though he can't scientifically explain how it's possible. Despite this, he advises against using military force as it may likely lead to casualties. Instead, he suggests using Chidi, his previous robot. Bora refuses since the robot was banned after it went out of control. He points out that if Chidi is revived, they may be unable to disable him anymore, which could threaten them. However, Vasigaran reminds the others that Chidi only became dangerous after Bora's father installed a red chip with a destructive program into the android to defame him. Still, the others fear that one miscalculation will make Chidi dangerous again, so Home Minister Kumar chooses to use the military. That night, as Manoj drives home, the cell phones appear on the road as a cell tower. This makes him crash his car, but when he checks again, the devices are gone. To his surprise, the cell phones reactivate, covering the entire road. They then chase him like a tidal wave, so Manoj runs into the nearby woods. However, he discovers that the trees are now covered with cell phones. The devices then cover his body and squish him before flying away in the shape of a giant bird. Meanwhile, Vasigaran and Neela break into the Artificial Intelligence Museum to recover Chidi. 2 days later, the military arrives to guard the reconstruction of the cell towers and the new supply of cell phones. Hearing this, Vaira demands his assistant to ask for military protection, given that leaders of telecommunication like him seem to be the targets. As workers rebuild the towers, cell phones discreetly infiltrate the area, causing panic and chaos. This ends with the destruction of the entire site. The news about the event immediately spreads, scaring Vaira. Before they can lock up the house, a cell phone smashes through a window. His assistant recognizes it as the minister's own cell phone. The phone then levitates and shows the sparrow video before choking Vaira. The minister is taken to the hospital as doctors attempt to remove what's choking him. Before they can, however, he dies. Afterward, the phone bursts out of his body to rejoin its comrades. Having seen this, Kumar calls Vasigaran and orders him to reactivate Chidi, not knowing that the scientist is already repairing the robot. Hundreds of people gather at the stores the next day, hoping to purchase new phones. However, one man gets lifted by his new phone before it joins the giant bird heading towards the city, making the people panic. Soldiers attempt to shoot it down, but the bird destroys everything in its path and grabs civilians. Fortunately, Chidi has been reactivated and takes nets from a construction site to catch the falling civilians. He then tosses the net to block the bird's path, allowing the people to escape. When it breaks through the net, it releases the devices to swarm him, but the robot manages to break free. As the robot runs on the side of a building, the bird's claw chases after him, so he magnetizes firearms from the soldiers below to defend himself. This doesn't work, so he crashes into the building and breaks through the other side with the bird still on his tail. He then commandeers a tank to launch missiles at the bird, though this only causes the cell phones to disperse. The bird reappears before him and swallows the tank, bringing him and the vehicle into the air. Chidi uses this chance to open the fuel tank and create enough friction to make the bird explode from the inside. He lands on a field and sees most of the devices on fire. Still, many of them are intact and begin to regroup. Just then, Chidi realizes that he's low on battery, so he runs to a nearby satellite dish to recharge using its generator. The giant bird reforms and tries to grab the robot, but it can't pass the satellite dishes around him. With no choice, the bird escapes. When he returns to his creator, Chidi reveals that they landed on an inactive space research center. The satellites were built to send positive signals into space to discover life outside Earth. This leads the scientists to conclude that the positive signals deter the cell phones, so a negative force must be controlling them. As Chidi plays a hologram of what happened, the scientist notices a face forming on the bird's body. As Neela looks into whose face was on the bird, Vasigaran and Chidi build a neutralizer against the phones. With the idea of a negative human energy controlling the devices, they believe that whoever they are have no physical form. Instead, the aura they left behind is causing the negative charge. To destroy this, they must send a powerful positive charge and neutralize it. Neela then reports that a man hanged himself under a cell tower the day before the phones went missing. Given this connection, the team visits the victim's home, where Chidi discovers the mobile phones deactivated on the grounds. With this chance, the scientist activates his weapon, but the phones gather as the bird to fight back. Its wings create a vacuum to pull the bus towards it, but Neela drives the vehicle forward to bring it down. Chidi helps push the bus as the positive energy begins neutralizing the bird. Despite their efforts, the constant disturbance breaks their weapon, so Neela and Vasigaran fix it while Chidi faces the beast. Still, their attack destabilizes the bird enough that it collapses on its own, only to reform into a humanoid. From the video feed, Vasigaran recognizes the humanoid as Pakshi Rajan. The humanoid attempts to destroy their weapon, but Chidi stops him. Pakshi asserts that his battle is against humans, so Chidi shouldn't interfere since he is a robot. However, Chidi refuses since his primary task is to protect the humans and destroy him. The two battle as Pakshi tries to destroy the weapon while the robot prevents him. Chidi asks why he's waging war on humans, so the creature leads him to his previous home, which also serves as a bird sanctuary. Pakshi used to be an ornithologist who cared for different species of birds. He was stillborn but was miraculously revived by a sparrow pecking on his chest. Since then, he's grown with birds as his companions and dedicated his life to them. He also became a professor who advocated how humans need birds since they kept the insect population manageable, ensuring that there were enough plants for humans and other animals to eat. When the bird population dwindled, Pakshi linked this to the rise of cell phone usage. The birds often migrated at certain seasons to survive, and they relied on the microrays from the sky to navigate. However, since the usage of mobile technology, humans had filled the air with radiation, which confused the birds during migration and led to their deaths. The radiation also damaged the birds' ability to produce strong shells for their eggs. He presented these findings at a conference, suggesting to control the usage of cell phones. However, no one was interested. Changing tactics, Pakshi soon met with Manoj to explain how their cell tower's excessive frequency rate was killing birds. However, Manoj thought he was exaggerating. Soon he found a cell tower being built near his sanctuary. He also was left alone in his protest, and Jayanth had him removed from the front of his store. When the cell tower near his home was activated, his birds were immediately affected and started dying. He then took the matter to Vaira, asking him to ensure that telecommunications companies would follow regulations. However, the minister pointed out that their citizens needed their mobile signals. Pissed, Pakshi listed how countries with greater populations had fewer networks than they do. This had Pakshi conclude that the Minister of Telecommunication was accepting bribes to allow companies to bend the rules. Offended, Vira dared him to take his claim to court. Pakshi did this, but Vira's connection allowed him to warn the companies when their cell towers would be checked for radiation. With them prepared, Pakshi's case was dismissed. Defeated, the man decided to perish on the same tower that killed his birds. However, the structure amplified the aura he left behind, allowing him to reunite with the birds he buried and begin his revenge. Hearing this story, Chidi agrees that his motivations are correct, but killing humans is still wrong. Pakshi argues that humans have ended countless birds, and their lives shouldn't matter less. He believes that everyone who owns a cell phone is responsible. Just then, Chidi receives an alert that the neutralizer has been repaired, so they activate it. This momentarily allows Vasigaran to control Pakshi, but the creature reunites with the other devices and turns into the giant bird. He attacks the truck, so Chidi quickly blocks it from smashing into nearby structures. The bird then focuses on the robot and scratches him, rendering him immobile. Seeing this, Neela uses a hook to lock their vehicle in place while she attempts to repair Chidi. She plugs him into her own cord to revive him, but this causes her to collapse. Soon, the bird pries the vehicle off its hook, sending the scientist into the air. Before it crashes to the ground, Chidi is reactivated and catches the vehicle. He points the neutralizer at the bird and finally neutralizes his aura. While Chidi recovers Neela's body, Vasigaran captures Pakshi's energy into a container. That evening, they return to the institute where Chidi revives Neela. The two then realize that when she connected him to her core, her programming to feel emotions was copied into Chidi's code. Soon, Vasigaran holds a conference to discuss his discoveries during Pakshi's capture. He notes that both living things and inanimate objects produce invisible auras. In his findings, Pakshi's aura was massive because it was combined with the auras of thousands of birds. This turned them into a ball of negative energy that controlled all cell phones in the city. They would have destroyed the nation if not for Chidi's help. Therefore, he publicly thanks his robot. With this, Kumar announces that the government has approved Vasigaran's program, allowing him to create more Chidi robots for the army. This, however, troubles Bora. Soon, the production of robots begins. As they help in production, Neela begins to admire Chidi, but he diverts her focus on their task much to her annoyance. Unbeknownst to them, Bora gains access to their laboratory and releases Pakshi's aura from its containment to sabotage his father's killer. That evening, Vasigaran discovers hundreds of cell phones in his bedroom. Later, a dazed Vasigaran starts protesting against cell phones to save the birds. When no one listens, he attacks those using their phones, causing panic. Alerted by the commotion, Neela and Chidi arrive at the scene and the latter realizes that Pakshi has possessed their creator. Chidi orders Neela to activate the neutralizer, but when she does, the effects hurt Vasigaran's body. Refusing to let their creator die, they deactivate the weapon. Suddenly, the scientist regains control of his body, ordering his robots to activate the neutralizer even if it kills him too. Chidi refuses and even shields him when soldiers arrive and shoot. Pakshi then regains control and rips off the robot's arm. For a moment, Vasigaran retakes control, so he orders Neela to activate the neutralizer. However, Chidi jumps and destroys the machine. With that, Pakshi takes over again and destroys Chidi. Vasigaran recovers again and sees his robot destroyed. He tries to tell Neela what to do, but Pakshi fights for control again and throws the female android away. He then gathers the cell phones around and creates a bird-like armor for himself before flying away. Once he's gone, Neela sees Vasigaran's note on a car's hood saying 2.0. With this clue, Neela breaks into the High Court archives and takes the red chip that once turned Chidi dangerous. Afterward, she assembles a new Chidi robot and installs the red chip, which she reprogrammed to only target Pakshi. This awakens Chidi 2.0, a smug version of the original. The two then activate the other Chidi robots and use the same red chip programming. Neela then notices Chidi playing with an action figure of himself, but when he gives it to her, the item turns into a mobile phone. The following day, Pakshi arrives at a stadium during a game. He finds most people on their phones, so he triggers their devices to levitate before their owners. He then announces his plot to kill them all using the same radiation that killed his birds. To demonstrate, he finds Bora amongst the audience and chooses him. The man defends that he's the one who released his aura, so he should let him go. However, Pakshi argues that he's still a cell phone user, so he throws Bora onto the field. He then activates the cell towers nearby and concentrates the radiation onto his victim, who disintegrates before them. The audience rushes in a panic, but Pakshi uses their phones to block the exits. Suddenly, Chidi breaks into one of the exits and faces Pakshi. He then shoots a bullet from his fingertips, but the enemy dodges and reverts his face to Vasigaran. Chidi starts looking guilty over shooting at his creator, but this is all a joke. He shoots Pakshi again, but he disappears. The cell phones start creating humanoid forms to attack the robot, so he magnetizes all firearms in the area and shoots them down. After they're eliminated, Pakshi returns as a giant bird and attempts to grab Chidi. However, something pushes him out of the way. A massive ball of Chidi robots reunites with their leader, who orders them to shoot the bird. The robots rain bullets on it, but the bird slams them with its wing, tossing them away. The robots then turn into a net and cage the bird inside. However, Pakshi disassembles the devices, allowing him to escape and recreate himself as a giant. Seeing this, Chidi starts magnetizing every metal item and uses them and his robots to turn into a giant robot. The two giants battle it out, turning the stadium into their stage. When the creature lands a blow to Chidi's chest, he triggers the fuel on the cars in his body to explode, disabling the robot. With his body in flames, Chidi runs back to Pakshi, then demagnetizes, releasing the other items and entering his enemy's body with only his robots. Chidi attempts to disassemble Pakshi from the inside, but the creature fortifies himself. The effort drains the robot's batteries, so Pakshi releases them and turns into multiple birdmen to destroy them. More phones start gathering in the stadium, cornering the audience into the field. With his targets in place, Pakshi increases the radiation from the cell towers in the city. He soon finds Chidi attempting to charge himself, so he goes to break him. However, a dove blocks his path, ridden by the small Chidi model called Cootie 3.0. The micro-robot threatens to kill the bird if he attacks his master. Hundreds of Cooties riding doves also threaten to break the bird's necks, so Pakshi relents. Cootie also points out that if the radiation reaches the stadium, the doves will be the first to die, so the creature deactivates the cell towers, saving the people. Outside, Neela releases more Cootie robots, who rush to the stadium. They then transform into cell phones and attach themselves to Pakshi's devices. Finally, Chidi is fully charged and triggers the microbots to self-destruct, breaking Pakshi's devices. The audience is finally freed, and Pakshi's armor starts disassembling. Chidi then shoots at Pakshi, but Neela shields the enemy to save their creator. Still, one lands on Pakshi's shoulder, forcing his aura to be released, thus returning the body to Vasigaran. Pakshi moves to possess Chidi, but the Cootie robots riding the doves threaten to self-destruct and kill the birds. The microbots then flee, and Pakshi chases after them. Chidi follows them to the space station and activates the satellite dishes, trapping Pakshi's aura and disintegrating him for good. Eventually, Vasigaran wakes up in the hospital with Neela and Kumar. The latter thanks the scientist for saving them again, but Vasigaran asserts that the technology is what saved them. However, technology also got them in trouble, so they should stop misusing it. Kumar asks if Pakshi will return, so Vasigaran assures him that he's gone. However, more evil forces could emerge. He adds that Pakshi was still right, so they need to control radiation emitted by the cell towers to prevent it from causing harm to any living thing. Kumar promises to raise this to the parliament before leaving. When he's gone, Vasigaran realizes that they must remove the red chip from Chidi now that his goal is completed. Neela assures him that she programmed the chip to self-eject upon completing their mission. With this, Chidi's original programming returns and reports to his creator. He announces that he and the other robots are called into the headquarters in Delhi, so Vasigaran encourages him to take Neela with him. The robots take this as their creator's blessing for their budding romance, so the two thank him. When they leave, Vasigaran calls Sana, only to find her pissed that he hadn't talked to her in days. Her ranting makes him wish his phone would fly away again, and to his horror, it does. However, it turns into Cootie, who's only fooling the scientist.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.